trying to kill Woonhui. As the needles get closer, Woonhui doesn't even move, smiling instead. He says he was going to play with Yu Chong a bit more, but it's time to end the charade. All the needles fly off in different directions as if the wind itself protects Woonhui, creating a barrier. The audience is surprised, asking what's with the wind, but Kyujin recognizes it as the wild wind. She recalls the stance Woonhui took yesterday. While she wasn't able to get a better look due to the poison ghost key, she now knows the technique he has learned is none other than the wild wind dance. Yu Chong is surprised as he recognizes it too, and says that he refuses to believe this, saying neither he nor Kyujin could master it, asking how Woonhui did. Woonhui laughs, saying it's thanks to a certain someone for assigning him a really good martial instructor. He crouches down, saying he guesses he's going to have to show him some gratitude, as he dashes off the ground, immediately closing the gap in front of Yu Chong. Before Yu Chong can even react, Woonhui is already opening his palm, coming in with an attack from the wild wind dance. He hits him straight in the gut, and we learn the name of the attack is called the Wild Wind Explosion, and it launches Yu Chong all the way out of the arena into a nearby wall, as we hear a loud crash. We see him slumped over in front of the wall, as he has even dented it. The audience is surprised that Yu Chong lost to Woonhui in a single strike. For him to do that is such a crazy upset, nobody expected anything of this caliber. Tae asks Gon how Woonhui knew the wild wind dance, and Woonhui says he told them he had a finishing move. Tae says not to brush it off like that, and Gon says he's right, and he won't, asking what they think and if that looks different from the wind they used to follow. Tae asks if he's really trying to say that Woonhui has the same wind talent as the branch head. Gon laughs, saying though it could still use some work, he managed to create a wild wind in just 10 days, and that's the kind of talent he wields. It might be too early to make a decision, but keeping tabs on him is worthwhile at least, asking if they agree. It says besides, he doesn't know if they were just empty words, but he claimed that he would inherit the Wild Wind Squad. So how can he not have high expectations? Gon then realizes he's still shrouded in the wind, and wonders what he's doing, as Woonhui calls out to Kyujin, asking if she would also like to have a duel, saying even though her little brother may be lacking, he would appreciate it. The audience are confused who is talking to, and then they recognize her as Kyujin, and they say that now that they actually are looking at her, she must have left Ching Cheng in time for the Dark Sovereign's visit, and they didn't recognize her because it's been so long. They say that they wonder if this means they'll get to see a duel between Woonhui with his mastery of the Wild Wind Dance, and the greatest prodigy of the Sichuan clan, Kyujin. They start to cheer her on, saying this will be on a completely different level than the previous one, and they sure are lucky, and they start chanting her name, which makes her feel uncomfortable. Jen says that it seems like things are heating up, and Tae asks Gon if he thinks that Woonhui stands a chance. Gon says that he shouldn't be skilled enough to face her, and he wonders what he's thinking. Defeating Yu Chong will be enough to increase his standing in the branch family, but if he can beat Kyujin, he could even aim to be the successor. But if he loses, he'll just make his sister the star of today's event, and even Kyujin should know that this is a bad move on his part, so she sits there wondering what he's thinking, saying if nobody else was around, she wouldn't care about saving face, but with eyes on them, it would be a stain on the clan's reputation for her to shy away. We hear the blue ghost face Root asking why she's being so considerate, saying he's the one who picked the fight first, and says that they know she's itching for a fight, she should just follow her instincts. She covers her ears, shakes her head, saying no, saying that Woonhui's been abused for too long, and she needs to prioritize him over the reputation of the clan. Woonhui then asks her what she has her thinking so hard, saying it's just a friendly duel, and that she's worrying too much, as she can just enjoy it. That immediately makes her realize something, as she leaps past him, saying that she's been holding back so much. Everybody's glad that she actually entered the stage, and we see her pivot, turning around, and she formally introduces herself, saying that she has received the teaching of Monk Woho for 5 years, and the one energy of heaven and earth, but she says that the people of the martial realm have graced her with the title of Thousand Petal Beauty, and she hopes it'll be an honorable duel. Woonhui does pretty much the same thing she just did, telling her not to go easy on him, that everybody starts cheering, saying now the duel is official. He says that she seems happy, and she says that it has been a while, as we see her actually blushing, and she says she hasn't been this excited in forever. He says that she seems a little too excited, and she asks how she could not be, as her dear Woonhui wants to have a duel with his big sister, as we see her sheath hit the ground. Woonhui says well then, and starts to get into his stance, asking her if she is ready. She says of course, as we see the blue ghost face Root starting to take hold, and she starts the charge in, telling him that it's time to get started. He says he hoped that she would give him at least a 3-second head start, and he uses another technique from the Wild Wind dance called the Cutting North Winds technique, blocking her strike, creating a shockwave. As we see him doing it with his bare hand, she says this is the same thing he used yesterday to block her sword. She then distances herself, saying that this makes her think that now she can swing as hard as she wants. She firmly plants her foot into the ground, dashing forward, and starts laughing, asking why she should give him a head start in the first place, saying he told her not to go easy on him. Woonhui says that she's fast, and in that case, he needs to try to throw her off as he uses the shadow afterimage, splitting himself into 3. She says that she can't believe he's using Yu Chang's technique, even though he just saw it, and that he's blowing her away, but she immediately cuts through the other images, heading straight towards Woonhui, saying that it is still too half-baked, as we see him having to block the attack. It sends him backwards a little bit, but he manages to regain his footing, asking when the swordsmanship of Ching Cheng was so violent. She says that this isn't the Ching Cheng swordsmanship, but since he's hiding that energy he showed yesterday, she's going to keep her secrets too, as she starts to laugh. He thinks about something, and then says in that case he'll show her, as he starts to activate his aura, as we see a purplish hue start to form off of him as he's using the Venom Dragon's essence art, called the Ghost Dragon release. We see her eyes light up, and she says this is what she wanted, as that poison in Ghost Key is so desirable. She launches some wind attacks towards him, and then readies her blade, and in the reflection, we can see the blue ghost face root enjoying the hell out of this, as it seems as if it's possessing her, as it says that it has been itching to fight against this key. Woonhui says that the atmosphere has completely changed now. The killing intent of the blue ghost face root has been bound by the clear energies of the Ching Cheng sword, and oddly enough, she reminds him of a demon wearing the clothes of a maiden. Since he's been given the first hit, he shouldn't hold back, and he'll control the flow by starting off with a strong attack. He punches forward, but she sidesteps it, recognizing it as the wild wind explosion that defeated Yu Chang, saying it's much stronger than before. She immediately counters, as we see a blade coming for Woonhui's eyes. He barely ducks underneath it as it cuts some of his hair, and he says that it was too obvious. The movements of the wild wind dance are too wide, and he should be careful about that whenever he fights someone stronger than him. He thanks her for the lesson, saying that the wild wind dance is a one-hit lethal martial art that boasts explosive momentum and fits with the supreme techniques of the Tang clan, but one-hit lethal techniques only work on those of a similar level. Woonhui puts his hands up, ready to block in case she goes for a follow-up attack, but she doesn't. He says in that case he needs a martial art that fits for continuous exchanges, as he gets ready to use the 12 fierce tiger steps, and that he plans to imbue the wild winds into this. Of course, Kyujin immediately recognizes the stance change and is surprised he learned that as well. While they're trading blow for blow, Woonhui says the greatest advantage to the wild wind dance is its explosive propulsion. If he uses the propulsion of the wild wind for the rotational movements of the 12 fierce tiger steps, it will allow him to do everything more explosively. We see him jump straight over her slash, she look in scary. He comes down from above with a flying axe kick, which she backsteps, causing him to smash the ground instead. He says he needs to go even faster than this, as he starts to use the wild wind dance to propel himself forward. She says she understands he's trying to connect the flow of the chained attacks, but he should expect his opponent will strike back when they have the distance. She uses the Sword of Discharge Lightning of Extreme Light. We see the attack starting to hit Woonhui all over, as he can only block so much of it. He says he was too reckless by charging her, as he continuously keeps getting scraped by the attacks. He ducks into her next attack, narrowly escaping death, leaving her surprised, but she immediately says that this is now a real fight, telling him to entertain her more, as they are yet again trading blow for blow in the middle of the stage. The crowd starts to go wild. One of the spectators notices something, as it's none other than the budget Hyang Sam, as Yu Chang is awake, asking what's going on. Yu Chang says on top of him losing, he didn't expect Woonhui to be able to keep up with Kyujin as well. He asks if his mother has returned, but budget Hyang Sam says no. He says he knows Kyujin won't lose, but the longer this takes, the higher that bastard's worth will increase. As he hears the crowd starting to chant for Woonhui, he says, and although it won't happen, if somehow Kyujin does lose, it would lead to the worst case scenario, and he begs for anything but that. Yu Chang's fist comes straight into contact with her blade, and he knocks it backwards up into the air. He says this is his chance. As he goes in to take advantage of the opening, it seems he was a bit careless, as Kyujin's knee flies straight in, hitting him in the chin, and she says he's focusing on the sword too much. He says he didn't expect this, as kicking techniques don't belong to the Ching Cheng sect, and she asks if he's that confused, saying although she's learning under their guidance, she's learned the martial arts of the Tang clan until just 5 years ago. Woonhui says that the Qing Chang's honest strikes and the Tang clan's striking techniques that aim for weak points which can seem as dishonest are two opposite martial arts but are aligned perfectly for some reason, and that this must be the true power of the blue ghost face root. As he comes in for a kick to her head, she ducks underneath it and immediately closes the distance, getting behind him by utilizing shadow step. He narrowly avoids getting his head lobbed off, but again loses some hair and distances himself, saying his mouth feels hot, and his heartbeat is pounding throughout his entire body, and this is how it feels to actually use martial arts and fight somebody. Kyujin tells him that he's pretty interesting, and he asks what she means. She says the fact that he can't escape the strict forms of martial arts and his movements make him seem like a beginner, but the way he reads his opponent's moves and avoids them is as sensitive as that of an old master who has fought over 100 battles. He laughs, asking if that's really the case, saying that now he understands how he moves for her. With his original body, which had no inner energy, he needed to survive amongst the peak martial artists who could kill civilians with a single hit, and reading his opponent's intentions and dodging their attacks was the battle strategy he honed for decades to survive and win. But after he gained inner energy, he forgot about those important things, and when he used the dark arts, he didn't use them because he was lacking in the basics of the mystic arts. And he starts to smirk, saying that won't change for martial arts either. She starts to get excited since he's seemingly different, and says that's a great look, as it looks like he's thought of something to try. She jumps through the air, twirling as if she was dancing, saying that she can't wait to see what her precious Woonhui came up with. Now that she's in his face, she tells him to go ahead and show her. He starts to read her intentions, saying that she's not aiming for his vitals, as it's in the blue ghost face root's nature to enjoy a duel as long as possible, and combined with Kyujin's way of holding back, it's created carelessness. As we see him preparing his hand for an attack, he says he's thankful for her kindness, but that doesn't mean he won't use this opportunity, as he uses the splitting tiger's claw, sending her flying backwards. But she seems a bit disappointed, saying that it's not a bad attack, but this is still the same. But then she realizes something, as she's not really flying back as far as she should, as the wind itself is stopping her, because the wind that she deflected with her attack just now is being gathered in front of Woonhui and restricting her movements. She starts to laugh, asking if he's already become this proficient controlling the wind. Woonhui rears his fist back, readying for the finishing blow, and Kyujin realizes that this is actually dangerous. She puts her sword up to block the attack, but the attack is so powerful, as soon as it comes into contact with her blade, there is an extreme shockwave unlike anything else they've seen today, shaking the entirety of the arena and the ground around them. Gon and his boys, and even every one of the participants, Yu Chong included, can't believe what they just witnessed. And Woonhui even strikes a cool-ass pose afterwards, then he raises up and looks over towards Kyujin. It goes back to Gon and his boys watching the match, and they immediately turn at him, confused, and he asks what they want. Then they wonder if Kyujin is okay. He asks if he didn't see that. Gon says even though Woonhui has far exceeded their expectations, what they were actually all surprised by was the light they just witnessed. As we see something forming around where Kyujin was standing, Woonhui asks her if she doesn't think that was a bit too cheap. She's surprised that he saw, saying that she wanted to keep it hidden until he brought it out. We see her smiling once again, saying that she guesses it can't be helped. Now she's been found out. She starts to exude a different energy than we've seen before, which we learn is actually sword energy, as she has finally reached the threshold of the peak stage. Yu Chong is super excited, saying that he knew he could believe in his sister, and now with this, Woonhui has no way of winning. Kyujin says that as he already knows, she can't drag things out any longer now that this has been brought out. He says he knows that dragging things out with someone of a lower level is seen as rude. She says it's too bad though, as she wanted to have some more fun, and she asks if she can see what he's hiding as well. Woonhui says that as she said, this duel will end with the next exchange. Although his cutting north wind technique blocked her attack just now, it's not going to be able to block a Qing Cheng sword strike with sword energy, and he can't afford to show his dark arts, so he only has one card left to play. She starts to laugh again, saying it looks like he's thought of something to try, and he asks if it really looks that way. She says yes, because right now it looks like his heart is racing, as even he has a smile on his face, which confuses him. He says he might have gotten a bit excited, and being cornered like this made him realize he's crazy about martial arts. She says that's a strange thing to say, and he asks what she means. She says that people like that who are so crazy about martial arts are what they call martial artists, asking if she's wrong. He realizes that it was actually so simple, and he starts to laugh, saying he understands. He was so absorbed in rushing to master martial arts after being reborn, but that was not the type of martial artist that he envied in the past. The emotion he felt while competing with her, whether it was to see how the martial arts he mastered played out, or how those martial arts fared against an opponent, it was the desire to rise up and win. This is the feeling he wanted from becoming a martial artist. She said it looks like he's had enough time to catch his breath, asking if she can attack, and he tells her to go for it. She dashes off the ground extremely fast. As we see him preparing something, she tightens her grip on her blade, raising into the air, imbuing sword energy into it, about to strike down. We see Woonhui preparing a Kamehameha, saying as expected of her energy. Then he'll use his own final strike that has the most destructive power among all of the movements in the Wild Wind dance. From there he'll mix in Ghost Ki and concentrate it. He stretches his hand out, readying his technique as they both collide with one another. We learn it's called the Booming Wild Cannon, as the collision from their aura actually sends bits of the arena flying through the air. Woonhui starts to get pushed back, and he wonders if it's not enough against somebody who's almost at the peak. The sword energy starts to actually split around his attack, and he says that he needs to clear his head of these trivial thoughts because he's being pushed back. Whether his strike will land or not, it's not as simple as that. The remnants from her attack go behind him, absolutely shattering even more of the arena. The pressure alone makes Yu Chong almost fall over, and he says that he's upset that a gap has grown between his and his sister's skills. There's no way that Woonhui survived a hit from that attack unscathed. Then he starts to see a purple aura in the middle of the smoke from the arena, and says there's no way. This is the moment Woonhui has been aiming for. As we see, her sword is pretty much out of sword energy, and it looks like it's about to crack. He says this was the moment when even she's caught off guard, because that is indeed what's happening as we see the crack on the sword expanding even more. He completely shatters it, dashing past her, sending parts of her blade through the air. He says it was inevitable because once the sword energy left, it only became a normal sword. His hand starts to shake, and he says that his arm has been paralyzed. But in a fight, the winner has normally decided the moment a sword breaks, but it's not over yet. As we see him readying aura into his feet now, he says that because it's Q Jin, she's the wielder of the blue ghost face root, as we see her turning to smile. He also starts to smile as well, saying that he knows she won't be stopped by a mere broken sword, but of course, it's the same for him. He makes the first move, leaping off the ground, soaring into the air, saying that he's going to put all of his remaining strength into this final strike. He starts to rotate his body for a kick while using the Wild Wind dance to propel himself, and it's called the Demonic Wind Hammer. Q Jin is absolutely loving every minute of this, saying that he's the best. She then starts to imbue her feet as well with aura, lowering herself to the ground. She leaps off using her own kicking technique called the Rising Dragon Kick Ascent to the heavens. Gon and his boys realize that they need to get down there and stop this before they collide with one another, but then they immediately tense up because, as we see, a shadowy figure leap into the middle of both of their kicks, stopping them. He says that he believes this is enough for playing around, leaving them both surprised. The man took that effortlessly and asks if they were thinking of greeting the family head from sickbeds. Q Jin immediately greets him as the family head, but Woonhui hesitates for a second and says that this must be his father, but he does the same thing she does and greets him. We are finally introduced to Tang Hosen. Dumpling tells him that he must be careful, and Goatee says that he thought he would have gotten weaker after the Wild Wind Squad was disbanded, but he can't believe he's accomplished this much. But Baldy is just scared. Woonhui says that he can also tell, even if he specializes in leading large organizations, he is still the leader of the Tang Clan's Special Martial Unit, and he thought the Wild Wind Squad's leader would only be as strong as the elders of the Heavenly Demon Cult, but seeing him now, he's much stronger than that, and he's not certain he could have defeated him in his past life. His father tells him that his gaze shows dissatisfaction, asking if he has something he needs to tell him. Woonhui immediately turns his head away, wondering if he was maybe staring too blatantly, but decides that he might as well go for it, and he locks his eyes back with his father's, saying that he was curious why the branch family head is here. Hosen asks if there is anywhere in the Nine Dragons branch family that he cannot go. Woonhui says he was concerned they might have dirtied his eyes with their inadequate duel. Every single person there starts to feel very surprised and tense about the ways he's addressing his father. Even Q Jin tries to get him to stop it, and she looks really scared. Woonhui says it's no wonder they're acting like this, because he's just an abandoned bastard who is talking back to the head of the Nine Dragons branch family. But from his residual memories and from seeing him with his own eyes, he can tell that his father is a true man of the Tang clan, as we see him grinning. He says indeed he did not find the duel interesting whatsoever, And Woonhui wonders if that's really how a father should speak to his son. But Hosen then says still,